Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Quick Fix Fantasy. It has been 10 years since we've been here. We had the holiday season, no Call of Duty, nothing to do with my life besides gamble on the NBA, losing the shirt off my back. But I am back, and so is Dr. Doug. What is up, Dr. Doug?
How's it going? Yes, it has been a long mid early season break. It obviously feels fairly weird. I'm glad that everybody got time to be with their families and stuff over the break. I think that's nice. Yeah, it's just the sort of the price that we pay for getting early Call of Duty, I suppose. But yeah, it sounds like my break was better than yours if you were losing an NBA. I managed to avoid the temptation of it, which would have been a sure loss. But yeah, how about you? How was your break?
It was good. I've been, this is like my Jordan flu game. I'm back. I've been sick for 11 days. Docs chalked it up to a sinus infection. I wanted it to be something cool if I was like in bed for 11 days, but it was just a sinus infection. But I'm back. My voice is back. I didn't have a voice 2 days ago. Really powering through. But, the holiday break it's always nice. I'm a huge Christmas guy. I always say I run off of nicotine and Christmas spirit. And like when Christmas rolls around, I'm happier than a pig in shit. I love it. I love my spiked eggnog. I love eating too much, falling asleep, and watching football. It's great. New Year's was great. Probably is the reason why I got sick, but it only comes around once a year. So you got to blow up, and it's inevitable. It happened, but it is what it is. You do anything good for the holidays? What do you do around those times?
Yeah, I'm not a big Christmas. I don't run on Christmas spirit, that's for sure. I just don't like the idea of putting out all these decorations up and then just to take them down like 2 days later. I would rather Christmas decorations stayed up for months because then I would be more excited about doing it. But there's something so unexciting to me about putting the Christmas tree up, knowing in my head that in like 2 weeks I'm gonna be right back here again, repackaging each of these ornaments individually to go
Yep.
back in a box for 11 months.
Yep.
But yeah, New Year's was fun. My parents came to visit us in Oklahoma for the first time, and they were here on New Year's. So that was fun. Got to hang out with some other people. Otherwise, Stillwater, Oklahoma is pretty quiet this time of year. All the students are gone. Most of the faculty went home. So we were just hanging out, but it was nice.
Love that. Love that, love that. Say, if a person like me, my tree's not coming down for another month. It's on right now. I sit in the living room by the tree every night. I watch basketball. I watch whatever. It's good. It plays into the feng shui of the living room, and it stays there until I get yelled at to take it down. So
That's respectable. Yeah, ours went down last weekend. It wasn't having that anymore, but I do like. Yeah, I mean, I like the tree. I no problems with the
no
tree.
beef
It's
with the
just
tree.
yeah, no beef with the tree. I like the tree. I like the decor. I like the ambiance. I do think that the living room feels weird now. No tree. Like even though we refilled in the space, it still feels like we're missing this giant green thing in the living room that we had before. But yeah, I don't know. I'm right there.
Well, you know what? Giant green thing you can add to it. Hopefully, after this week, a huge bag of money from what's going on in Call of
Oh,
Duty being back. Boom.
excellent.
Didn't miss a beat. But before we get into what's coming up, let's talk about what happened. I know a lot of people probably forgot what happened before the break. Me, I had to educate myself again. All I remember is the Boston Breach beat Toronto Ultra in dominant fashion. Huge win for the boys there. Not biased, but I think they're really hitting form. But what else went on, Doug? You fill us in a little bit about what I
Yeah.
forgot about. What everyone else forgot about, probably.
Yeah, no, I mean, like when we were preparing for this segment, I was very like, yeah, like having to go back and like, what happened week two specifically? Obviously, we had a show after week one, so I think we got to talk. So I think I wrote down three big things that I'm taking away from week two, which is Miami is 3-0. They're technically first in the league. There are a few teams that are 3-0, but they do have the best win percentage. So they are first in the league right now in CDL points. They had wins against Vegas and Minnesota in week two. Not particularly strong teams in hindsight or like after watching the games, I think. But I mean, 3-0 is 3-0. So I think it's interesting. And I tweeted a little about this, but like, yeah, it's interesting to see how people view Miami right now because I think they're clearly better than teams like Vegas and Minnesota. And I don't know, who was their first game against Carolina? Yeah, it was against Carolina. So I mean, they've played three teams that I think are lower tier teams. And so, I mean, yeah, we know they're better than them, but how much better than them? It's really hard to tell in a game like Call of Duty where there's only 5 games or whatever to know. So I think that's a big storyline coming out of week two for me is how good is Miami going to look like coming into this week? And
Right.
then, yeah, New York and ATL, the other two teams that are 3-0, both of them remained solid through week two. New York only played one game. I think Atlanta played two. I don't remember what their second game was. But yeah, both teams looking strong. Maybe they only played one too. I don't think they played one in week one. So yeah, so both of them looking strong, both 3-0. And then the other question, or the other of the big four, I think, is Toronto. They, as you already alluded, they lost 3-0, but then also 100T lost 3-0 to LAG, which is crazy. I mean, obviously, I have some LAG allegiance, and I think it is actually kind of crazy to look at the like. Yeah, LAG has only lost to LAT once ever in the CDL, which is like, I mean, even at the time, I thought that was crazy, and now it's like, yeah, there's something to it. Like, no matter what the roster is, that the battle for LA just brings something different out of the boys. Maybe something to look forward to next time these two teams have to play.
It's a
But yeah,
thing.
so
You know, it's a thing.
I'm starting to believe it. I mean, yeah, it's just no one game in particular really makes me go, oh my gosh, like there's some curse here or whatever. But like when you step back and look at it on the whole, like some of the stats that Lag is putting up against LAT is just it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so 100T and Toronto both stumble after looking fairly strong. LAT coming back with a big bounce back win just to then get 3-0'd by the Gorillas is interesting. Yeah, I think those are the big takeaways. I think like how good is Miami, and then how great are Atlanta and New York? Are they unbeatable? I mean, we're going to see Atlanta playing Los Angeles Grills in the first game of this weekend. It's a big like okay, how good is Atlanta? Yeah, are they minus 2,000 favorites here? Are they minus 1,000 favorites? Are they minus 500? Like how good do we really think they are? And then how are Toronto and LAT going to look on the bounce back? I personally think Toronto's still really strong, but I mean, yeah, you can't ignore a game like that where they got smoked. Like that was not pretty. I mean, obviously it's been said, but Envoy had that might be one of the worst series of all time. That was horrible.
You got to get out of
But
the system early, maybe. It's so
yeah, I
early
mean,
in the season.
I don't think anybody thinks that Envoy is going to be putting those numbers up every day. And like, but yeah, at the end of the day, COD's a team game, and they lost 3-0. Like, even getting whatever it was, 11 kills it's not the whole thing. The team needs to do something to bounce back. They can't just go into practice and say, oh, whatever, that won't happen again. We'll be fine. Like, yeah, let's see what they have to offer now.
Yeah, so before going into the holiday break, FaZe did play one that weekend. So not the week they played on the Saturday of the weekend, obviously going into the holiday season. They beat Seattle 3-1, and then they didn't play obviously on Sunday or that Friday. So they are just kind of sitting, waiting to play a game, going to holiday break. I believe they got back very early and started scrimming on the earlier side compared to other teams, playing against some challengers teams, just kind of trying to get their reps in. But with LAG, they have a lot to take on this weekend. They open up against FaZe, and then on Saturday they have Boston. So they have a big weekend ahead of them. Hopefully on Friday at least they keep it rolling and really play on that momentum. But seeing that 3-0 was amazing. Seeing a whole Sunday of 3-0s was even nuttier. Like going into the facility like with the guys, I'm like, okay, I was not expecting to play right now. I have to get ready. I was like an hour and a half of ahead of schedule. I was like, holy shit, I gotta run. But that was a very quick Sunday, but very good going into the break. But with that being said, we are now gearing up for Major 1 that's going to be taking place in Boston, and a lot of teams are going to be trying to play for that winners bracket. And we might see some upsets. We might see some no-brainers in there, but everyone's going to be fighting for that this weekend for better seating, especially at the first major, trying to, really kick things off with a bang. But before we get into what's coming up, anything that you learned from, what would you learn up until this point? You have any lessons for the people out there?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like to include just a little tidbit, just something that's on my mind before we dive into the games each week. Just trying to try to show what I'm thinking about going into these weeks. I will say, and we didn't really talk about it, but I had an incredible second week. I know after week one, I said I was I think I came out a little, I think I was like down one unit after the whole weekend, which seemed like I kind of escaped with my life. And I said every game felt really unpredictable. I think I clean sweep through the second week. I just felt much more confident. And so like the thing I wanted to talk about quickly here is just like informational advantage in betting in general, but also like how you can apply information that we have from one source to any other source. So I think it's like you're doing yourself a disservice if you're playing DraftKings, for instance, by not looking at PrizePicks totals. Like if PrizePicks has some information. They maybe aren't perfect, and like that's why we play the game. But like they certainly are a great place to ground yourself when you're making projections for daily fantasy, like DraftKings. But then the other way too, like if DraftKings they have prices on their players, that can be helpful to indicate how strong those teams maybe are. Maybe that helps you with your PrizePicks. But I think the big thing for me is that this year we have no API for stats from the league. The league isn't providing any stats. They've ghost took down all the stats on the CDL website as well without saying anything. There's literally no way. I mean, and I'll give some plugs for places you can find stats. There are not easy ways to get stats like there was even last year. And I think I take that for granted a little bit because I obviously, I know the right places to look for stats. I had access to the stats from the CDL teams and stuff like that. Like we have that sort of information, but not everyone does. But this year it's accentuated even more. Like there are very few people who have access to good data, and then even fewer who are using that properly. And I think we need to think about that when we're playing. I think this applies more to DraftKings because you're playing against other players. Like you're trying to take money from them, or PrizePicks, you're trying to take money from PrizePicks. But in both cases, like the informational advantage can be bigger, I think, this year than it ever has been because there's so little information to go around. So I think like the big thing is, I mean, like the big provider of data that we have this year is Breaking Point, no doubt about it. Big ups to them. I see they're kind of rolling out the stats slowly here. Like they're not offering team stats yet. And like getting map to map stats is tricky. Their interface, I think, is kind of confusing, but like it is there, and that is important. And like that is actually, I've always said, like, the longer it takes me to do something to collect data, the better I feel about it because that means somebody else isn't taking the time to get it done. And so Breaking Point, I think their data is really hard to get like spot right now, and that's probably great. Like that makes me happy to think, oh, okay, I have to go to each one of these pages and get these stats or whatever I'm doing, or yeah, I see some crazy people on Twitter who are like watching the kill feeds back and getting all the stats. Like that takes forever, but you know who's not doing that? Everybody else. The people you're playing against on DraftKings. Like, like the people betting on PrizePicks that are moving the lines around, they are not as well informed as you could be. And so I think it's important that like know that that's there and that other people are using it. And if you're not using it, look in the mirror because it's probably really important.
If it was easy, everyone would do it. Everyone would be winning, So, go the extra step. Before you move on, shout out Breaking Point. They are doing phenomenal stuff. They always have been. Obviously, what they're doing for analytics, but also with the BPL, I think it is a massive, massive, massive move for the whole scene to be able to, run privates and be able to grind for XP. They're taking advantage of certain missing pieces within the scene, like API, game battles going away. They know how to insert themselves in the right way and give the community what they need. So shout out to them.
Yeah, shout out to EasyMac specifically. That guy's crazy. The stuff that he puts up with on Twitter literally would make me deactivate my account. There is no one that I'd want at the helm more than him, and I mean that sincerely. It's crazy.
He's a local guy. It's in us. The grit.
Yeah, these Boston boys, they're bred a little different. But yeah, no, it is. I definitely echo that. I think that's Breaking Point's just doing it all right. And yeah, I say that about their stats, but yeah, as I said right beforehand, they're the only one doing it. They're the only one providing the stat. You don't see me collecting stats by hand every game because I'm too lazy. Those guys, they're grinding, and they're grinding and letting you get paid off of their hard work too. Like if you take those stats that they meticulously handcrafted and then use it to win money on PrizePicks, you're making money and they're giving it to you for free.
And they're doing it for the love of the game. Like I'm sure they're getting paid in some aspect, from ad revenue, whatever. But they're really doing this for the love of the game. So you look
at like the changes that EasyMac is talking about for BPL and just like Breaking Point in general, talking about like it really shows that they're doing it from the perspective of what would we want to see, and then like no doubt they're making money from from ads and stuff, but they're not making the site to make money. They're making the site and then getting ad revenue because their site is awesome and because like the services that they provide are good. Like, and that's like a big distinction. I think is like, yeah, they know what they would want and they're bringing it to you, and it just so happens that you really do want that. Like, and I think that's like, yeah, you don't see that every day in Call of Duty or in esports in general. So, yeah, big ups to them.
Hell yeah. So with that being said, when it comes to analytics and whatnot, I'm looking at your notes right now, and I'm trying to see something myself because I've never heard of this website, and I don't know if you want to give out the sauce, but I'm kind of
Yeah,
putting you on the spot right now to give out the sauce. What
yeah,
else
I'd
should people
forgotten that
be
I
looking
wrote
at?
it. I heard a rumor that Carson, former analyst for the Seattle Surge, Carson with KARSENCLS on Twitter. He used to have a website before he joined Seattle, codleaguestats.com. And I heard a rumor that it might be coming back and that he does a lot of hand track stats, but also some really important advanced stats that we don't typically have. I know he might be including impact rating in those stats, which is something that I developed. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. I don't know how fantasy relevant impact rating is, but like, yeah, he's doing. I mean, he did an amazing job. I can only speak to what he had done in the past. That site was awesome, but I heard rumor that it was coming back. That's codleaguestats.com. So yeah, keep an eye on. I don't think it's up and running yet, but it will be soon, is what I'm hearing.
So
So.
what I'm looking at right now, I am looking at MW3 hard point player stats.
Yeah, I know he's been putting some stats up there. I don't know if it's a finished product. Yeah, I wouldn't
But
go and
it's
be
working.
critiquing.
It's
But yeah, it,
starting.
it is working. Yeah, I do know. Yeah, you
And they
can
have
go and
impact
see.
rating, and I mean that comes from you potentially. So I don't know. I feel like you know
I
what you're
heard the guy
talking
who
about
made
right
that
now.
is really smart. Yeah.
That's what I've heard too. I heard that he forgot to pay his heating bill though, so he sees his breath in his house.
My heat may or may not be off, and it may or may not be my fault.
Love that. All right, so let's move into the weekend. One thing you were talking about is what are these odds going to be for the Atlanta LAG game? They are exactly what I thought they would be. I was going to say I thought they'd be higher, but I feel like this is where they should be. As of time of recording, Atlanta FaZe is minus 1,200 and LAG is plus 600. What do you think about that, Doug? Is that accurate?
Yeah. I'd say that sounds about right. It's really interesting, and I actually made this note with the information part because like information is interesting here about LAG. Like we think about them. I mean, obviously they've been huge underdogs in their games. They obviously had a huge upset in their game against LAT that people didn't expect. But I mean, they are 5-5 in maps this season. They have lost as many maps as they've won, despite being like relatively unfavored in their games. Obviously, a 3-0 really helps that. We're very small sample size right now still, but they are 5-5 in maps, and in search they are, I think, even in round count too. So like, I don't know, it's interesting. They're a team that hasn't done anything wrong. Like they've played well. They have a 3-0 against a fairly strong team. They're 50-50 in maps, 50-50 in rounds in search. Like, what more do you want from these guys? Like, and yet they come into this game as plus 600 dogs. Like, I mean, obviously I think Atlanta's stronger than them, but like, yeah, it's hard for me to know where they are. I think it's very clear that the bookmakers feel that LAG is still probably the worst team in the league. But I mean, yeah, you look at the small sample size, albeit that we have already. Like, it's just hard to make that case. Like, if I covered up LAG and showed you these stats, you'd say, I mean, they're not good, but like, they're pretty good. If I got to tell you their opponents too, you'd be like, they seem pretty good. Anybody can beat anybody any given Sunday, but like, they're winning fairly consistently. So I don't know. I think LAG is really interesting. I did point out here, they have, despite having a 50% round win in search, they have the ninth best KD in search, which is concerning to me. I mean, we talk about KD not meaning everything. Search kills are pretty much the only thing that matters. I've actually done some research in the past that I've published about how damage in search can be very misleading. Like, teams that get the most damage in search are typically the worst teams, because if you get damage but can't get kills, like, there's nothing worse than giving away information basically for free. It's like the percentage of healed damage that a team has is like very indicative of how strong they are, because they're able to get information, take shots, and get away. Yeah, so it's interesting to see their KD so low. Yeah, it makes me think we're due for some regression, but yeah, I don't know. This is interesting. How do you feel about this game? How do you feel about LAG in general first, but then how do you feel about the game?
So I am a huge person that vouches the most dangerous person are people that have nothing to lose. And I think that about LAG. I think they're playing balls to the walls because they have nothing to lose. The expectations could not be lower, and they have nothing to lose. And when I see they have a 50% rounds like differential in search, to me, like that's good. You know, you're taking it the distance, and from a betting standpoint, I think of more rounds, more chances for kills. I might potentially be looking at overs when LAG are playing search and destroy matches. I don't think they are a phenomenal team. I don't think anyone in this league is a terrible team. Like you said, anyone can win any given Sunday, Saturday, or Friday, or Thursday for, majors. But, I think they're a dangerous team just because they're able to, try different things and, play with that chip on their shoulder that no one expects us to do anything. And I know, data and the way I think about the 110%, they don't line up. And, you start here, but you have to back with data. I get it, Doug. I get it. But like when no one believes in you, you want to prove everyone wrong. And I hope we see that at LG. That would be a phenomenal story. And hopefully, if they come out swinging and they make a name for themselves, maybe their org starts caring about them again.
I wouldn't hold my breath, but
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and I think one point, like obviously, yeah, I have always been against the 110% thing, but I think one thing that you mentioned there that I think is 100% true is that like when no one has any expectation of you, you can try things that other teams wouldn't try. I've been very critical in the past, and I still am critical of teams that are middling or average, just trying to be like for lack of a better phrase, like be phase. Like they're just trying to be phase, but they're worse. Like and like that is, I think, a trap that a lot of teams in the CDL have gotten into every season for the past 4 years. But like, yeah, but teams like LAG this year, I think, yeah, have a legitimate chance to try to play their own game and like be good, be the best at the thing that they're good at, instead of just trying to be the best version of phase that you can be as a team that doesn't have Simp and Abizi on it. Like, and like that is a really tough thing, even for the worst team some years to try. They just, yeah, these teams that are getting smoked every game and they get into practice and say, okay, what routes are phase hitting? How can I get into the gunfights that Simp's getting into? And it's like, no, like
Mhm.
do something else. And so I think having a team full of fresh face, some rookies, fresh faces, a new coach that hadn't coached before, just all of that. I think you're spot on that like they can legitimately do things that a team that with senior players that isn't good might not do.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. I know firsthand that playing against teams that play weird can just make you lose.
Yeah.
Like it just makes you lose games. Like bad play. Yeah, I remember lots of scrims against challengers teams. The first time you play them, it's like they just smoked us because I didn't know what they were doing. Because yeah, they're playing different people. They're getting different ideas. So like yeah, I like all. I think there definitely is something to all of that. Like I don't think they're playing harder, but I definitely think they're playing hard to play against.
Oh
If
yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're going to be a pesky team. And when you play them, it's like one thing you see a lot is people play down to who they're going against,
Yeah.
and they're gonna catch a lot of people with their pants down. I feel like throughout the season.
100T.
Yeah, exactly. Like caught them with their pants down by their ankles, and like maybe that starts people like, okay, we can't take them lightly because we've seen some huge upsets because teams just take it easy because they figure that it's going to be a walk in the park. But it's not going to be a walk in the park starting off against FaZe, obviously, the most dominant team in Call of Duty,
Looking good again
historically.
this season.
Look great this season.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, they're always going to be hard to beat. They're always going to be in that top three spot. But what sticks out to you from a wagering standpoint in this? Are there any lines that are jumping out to you for these players?
Yeah, I picked out two that I think are interesting. Just looking at PrizePicks initial offerings here, it's a bit later now. When I picked these out yesterday, it was a bit earlier. But Abizi map one over under 23 and a half kills. I think that's interesting. He's only gone over 23 and a half kills once in the five hard points that they've played this season. And then in 4 out of 5 of the games that they've played, both teams have gotten at least 200 points. And so something I've talked about on this podcast many times in the past is like game length is the key. I think you talked about it earlier. Game length is the key. And so when you're seeing long games, expect the kill totals to be higher. So like, yeah, it means a lot more to me. A guy drops 30 in a game that they win by 150 points versus dropping 30 in a game where it's 250, 249. That's not impressive at all. And so to see him going over only once, despite the fact that they're giving up 450 combined points in 4 out of 5 games, makes me think yeah, like his average is probably a bit inflated by just having long games. So if they are expecting a shorter game against LAG, it makes me a bit, yeah, it makes me think maybe this under has some merit to it. I think this year and it's early season, like the maps play a big role, but I think you definitely will have time. At least I've had experience that like there's time to make adjustments after the maps come out so far. There's no consensus yet about like how strongly the maps affect kill totals yet. And so like last year at the end of the year, it was like as soon as the maps got posted within a second, every line was just like up 2, down 1, up 3 or whatever. And this year you don't. So like I do think like take that piece of information into mind. And then if you feel like the map environment is good, like I think that's an interesting spot.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that. Yeah, that's interesting. You know that I didn't know that the record existed with 1-4, especially with them getting 200 plus per team. That is an underhammer. Me personally, I'm probably going to hammer the under on that one. Obviously, everyone can make up their mind on their own, but you know, everything's just kind of coming together in that point. Who they're playing, what those numbers are, the number being could be inflated. Looks like an under. And then you had one more on here. We're going to talk about the search and destroy, my guy. Who do you got on that?
Yeah, so I rarely talk about search and destroy plays because I think they're tough. One, I think that like the more search data you have, the more predictive you can be with it, and we don't have that many games this year. And I picked out Draza too, which is someone who doesn't have data on phase going back. But I do think it's interesting. Like phase has looked strong in hardpoint, and Draza's had two bombs so far this year, 7 and 5, but he's listed over under 6.5 for map 2. It seems hard. Like, yeah, I mean, like their team has played. It'd be one thing if like they had been losing their searches and he hadn't been getting a lot of kills, and then yeah, going to this game, obviously they're going to be a huge favorite in search. So I'd say okay, whatever. Like even if he was averaging 5 kills a game, I'm going to put him at 6.5 if I'm PrizePicks because like they're going to win this game and like that'll be good. But yeah, like to see them winning games and him still dropping twos is makes me think that yeah, like his role on the team in search is just not conducive to very many kills, and like maybe this is our last chance to be getting in on some like easy unders here before they move it to 6. Like I think 6 is where we saw most of the super low producing. Actually, ironically, Slasher was like the king of getting the 6 over under on PrizePicks for search, and like he's replacing Slasher. So I don't know, it makes you wonder maybe that role that he's playing in search is similar, where obviously we know Draza to be a bit more active player than Austin was, but like yeah, in search you have roles like so I just thought that'd be interesting. I do think if you're making your under bets solely on 4 numbers is 2, 7, and 5 kills in 4 games, like it's too small a sample size, but I think it's hard to ignore the fact that like if you're watching the games and you have that inkling, I think yeah, it's something I'd if I'm not going to bet this, probably it's interesting, but it's yeah, I'm a little reluctant on the sample, but if I were, I would probably go back and watch the games and see how he plays. Like, yeah, is his role just that slow? Like, is his role the yeah? If Simp's gonna go out and get a 3-piece, I'll never even have a chance to take gunfight kind of thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. I might watch those games back even now that I say it. I might watch those games before tomorrow just to see. Because yeah, the data doesn't tell us everything.
It's tough to see that number, especially with Draza. Like it confuses me too because you saw like MW3 Draza, right, where it was just flying around with the AI and whatnot. But like on this team, a phase, maybe he is taking that slasher out where he is the slow, methodical AI. And his 5 and 7 comes from 5 against Seattle and 7 against LA Thieves. Before that, one of the twos comes from playing Boston, and then the site doesn't go back more. But use that info as you want if teams play similar or whatnot. But yeah, that's like playing blackjack, and you know you have I don't know, a 16. It's tough to hit on it, but you know you kind of have to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, it is tough.
It's tough. All right, well, that's good insight on that game. For the people listening, these are the Friday games, just, you know, for easy searching. Next matchup, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a good one. I expected this one to be a little closer on the lines, to be honest with you, but we have Seattle Surge plus 150 and Toronto minus 200. I think these should be a little bit closer, not a whole lot closer, but I don't think there's that much of a jump between them.
Yeah. I mean, this is a classic your prior facing off against recency bias or what I guess like the two biases you have. The one which is I'm familiar with your game, and then the one where it's like okay, well, in the last game you didn't look very strong. I think those two things are playing factor here. Like Toronto, if I didn't care about last week's game specifically, or if it wasn't their last game, I'd say, oh yeah, this looks right. Toronto's one of the strongest teams in the league. Whatever, Seattle's a middle team. Okay. But I do know their last game, they did not look strong at all. So yeah, I don't know. To me, this reads as the books not caring that they lost 3-0, saying, hey, before that weekend, we were confident they were strong. They still look pretty strong. They got smoked, whatever, move on. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I do think that that's like such a bookmaker way to look at lines, is to be like, I only care about the long term. I only care that, like, yeah, like everybody was happy to bet at these sorts of prices two games ago, just because they had one big loss, and 3 games ago they were happy to bet those prices. So I don't know. Yeah, this just, like, I wasn't surprised to see it, but I sort of agree with you that I think, like, probably the true line here is a bit closer between these two teams. I think Seattle's looked fairly strong. They lost to Texas, right? Yet, and so, like, they look strong otherwise. Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of meat left on the bone here in terms of betting on the money lines for these teams, but I do think that, like, maybe some player props on players that, like, are getting overhyped is maybe in order.
Yeah, I think this is a bounce back game for Toronto. If I'm a betting man, which I am, I'm looking at map total potentially going, like, outside of just props. Currently, it is over 4.5 is plus 160, and under is minus 210.
Interesting.
I think potentially I go with the over here. I think that it's a bounce back game for Toronto. It'll be a close one that they end up winning. They'll be happy about it. We bounce back. All that. But I think Seattle, takes them. It takes them the distance.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're getting good odds for it for sure. Yeah, 160 to go map 5. It just anybody can win a search and then just steal one of the other respawns before getting to map 5. That seems extremely doable. Yeah, no, I definitely like that. Plus 160 seems like you're definitely getting good odds.
You get some meat on the bone there. It's
Yeah.
it's worth it in my opinion. I'm a big value guy. I chase the value. I bet 50 cents on a 25 leg parlay to win $1 million. Like, I'm all
Hey,
about it. I'm all
did you
about it.
see? There's like the I saw, it's like a meme, or it was like a tweet on Twitter. It's like our parents and grandparents had it so hard because none of them could have put 25 cents on a 25 leg parlay and won $1 million. That only exists in our time
Yeah,
now.
yeah, it's
Like,
true.
they they're preaching that. I don't know, that one gets me every time, but it is so true. Yeah, grandma and grandpa, they were fighting in wars, and yeah, like walking uphill to work both ways, and I'm putting in 50-cent parlays trying to win $1 million, and I
Yep.
don't even have to do anything.
I'm
I can
putting
just
five
watch
hours on
sports.
stat muse sitting on my couch.
This is the 50th game when the full moon, and
Yep,
Jokic went for less than 37 the day before. Oh my God, mom,
yep, yep.
put the down payment on the house.
100%. We're retiring. Generational
Yeah.
wealth. So within this matchup, Osity's had a hot start, and I know he's on here right now. Talk to me a little bit about how you feeling with Osity's and why this line jumps out to you on map 3.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, looking at his average, he's averaging 18 kills a game. So his line is, what did I put here, over or under 21 and a half for map 3. He's averaging 18, but if we look at those games, so I just pulled up the actual games. His most recent game, he had 10 kills against FaZe in a 1-3 loss. But he had 18 against Texas in a 3-1 win, 31 against Boston in a 3-2 win, but then 13 in an 0-3 loss to 100T. I think, I don't know, the way that I'm reading this is, one, like, the 31, that's in a 5-round game. Obviously, we know these longer games, you're expecting longer. Yeah, it just seems like, I don't know. I'm not sold that he can put up that kind of performance, a 30 kill game against a team this strong, a team as strong as Toronto. I'd look to the games that he played against Texas and against Atlanta more recently, 10 and 18 kills. I think 21 and a half, it's hard for me to get there, I think. Yeah, I sort of was saying, oh, I think, yeah, this game maybe should be closer than we're expecting, but I think the odds of this game not going to 5 rounds in control is pretty high. And to me, that says, okay, they're playing a stronger team. I think 21 and a half is pushing it. I'm not really sure how I feel about this. It's one that, like, it jumped off the page when I was first researching it, but I don't know. It really depends on how tough you think Seattle's going to be able to play Toronto, I think.
Yeah, and this is kind of a little tidbit. This came out today. I'm not sure how long these players have been playing on the current patch, But spawn changes happened to Invasion today as well as
Invasion.
Terminal. So curious to see how that plays because I know Invasion is a control pick for a lot of people, and Terminal's already mixy as it is. And I know a big thing on Terminal is playing for P2 spawns by staying in like back scanners, TSA, whatever you call it. And they fixed that today to make it not so easy to get those spawns. So don't know how long they've been
Interesting.
playing on that patch. I don't have any insight on that, but curious to see how that plays this weekend as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So are the spawns for Control 2, or was it hill specific spawns? I guess when I saw it, I thought they meant hardpoint only spawns,
Okay, so
or if it was just respawn changes to the hill to that area or whatever.
So I want to go back on what I said. I just looked at the patch notes again. This does not apply for terminal hardpoint or control or search. Nothing. This only applies for team deathmatch and domination. So I
All right,
apologize.
awesome.
Don't mean to
Thank
get you
you.
guys worried, but the invasion one, they changed P3 lighting so you could see better in P3, and then adjusted spawns to prevent unnecessary spawn flips, while the bus station capture point P3 is active. So that one is hard point. So invasion's the only one with spawn changes.
You've provided us no new information, is what you're saying,
No
or
new
no,
information.
no better. How much do you think the lighting changes will affect the over/unders?
Honestly, that's one extra kill right there. If you can see
Yeah, that's
him,
true. You see him,
it's one extra
and
kill.
you see him from farther away, so you can get a kill quicker. Increases the pace of the overall game.
Exactly. The impact effect, or whatever you call it.
Yeah,
Uh,
the impact rating. I gotta take that into account in the rating because
yeah,
right now it's not calibrated
I
correctly
would.
for these
So
lighting changes.
pretty much what I just did is I had a 2,000 word essay to write in school and I had 1,500 words and I'm just filling.
And so you can see that
Yep, yep.
invasion, as we know, is
Yes.
yeah,
If you take a step back and actually take a look at the map invasion in Modern Warfare 3, yeah,
yeah,
I'm filling time.
exactly.
Filling time. All right, last match of Friday. We have Minnesota. As of time of recording, the line is plus 275, and the New York sub line is minus 400. I thought New York would be favored a lot more than this, to be honest with
Yep.
you. But yeah, again,
It
not 100% sure. I think it's the books not really knowing what the Minnesota Rocker is. I don't know.
I would generally agree with the books on that. Yeah, it's tough. I'm not. I haven't given up on them yet, but yeah, they haven't looked particularly strong. Yeah, obviously, I mean they lost to Miami. Who are their other losses to? They lost to
They
the
lost to
only
Miami.
optic.
They lost to
They
Vegas
lost
as well.
Yeah, lost to Optic. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, it's the. I mean, yeah, Vegas is tough, but yeah, I don't know. They're a team that yeah, if they bounce back, I really wouldn't be that surprised. But I also don't expect them to be surprising us against New York. New York has looked incredibly strong. Just looking at the stats of New York's players too, like they've been pretty strong across the board, which I think is interesting. Kismet has looked really strong. I like Kismet over in Map 3 here that we'll talk about a little. But yeah, I don't know. This isn't a game where I see Minnesota surprising anyone. But I also think that yeah, Minnesota's a team. They have a rookie. I think if anyone could benefit from the long break that we've had here after a couple of learning of losses that they can learn from, maybe they look a bit more impressive. But I don't know. I also don't think New York is the type of team to be asleep at the wheel either. So we'll see.
I also
Yeah,
wouldn't doubt this weekend if we saw some upsets just with the long break. I feel like people might come out flat after not after taking those couple weeks off. I wouldn't doubt it if we saw some sort of upset this weekend. I can't put my finger on which one it can be, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple.
yeah. I know the big news is that Carolina might be playing without Real, which would be, I mean, obviously throws a whole wrench into those plays as well. I'm trying to think if there's any other like specifically relevant news, but yeah, it's yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't. How long have teams been playing? Like when were most teams getting back into practice?
So I can speak for Boston from what I've heard from people I'm friends with over there. They got back into town on the 3rd and they were scrimming by the 4th, I want to say. So they've been scrimming for about a week, a little over a week.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I
But
think
teams don't take it off. Like when they're
yeah,
home, like they're scrimming from their like home computers. They're just not in
It's
facility.
not this, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not the same type of practice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised to see teams come out flat a bit, but yeah, it's hard to know who's going to be the one to come out flat because all the teams had the same break, like they all had the same length break here. So you're not getting one team on a road back to back against a well-rested team or anything. Like everybody's coming in the same. But
Everyone's well rested. Everyone's well
yes.
rested. But talk to me a little bit about map three. You said you like Kismet. His line as of yesterday, I believe, or this morning, it
Yep.
was 22 and a half for map three. What jumps out to you there?
Yeah, I mean, so they played three controls. So New York has played three controls so far this year. I think it's interesting because he has, I think, looking at okay, so he has 25 and a 3-1 win, 21 and a 3-1 loss, and then 28 and a 3-2 loss. Again, looking at like these maps are all longer. I think like if you adjust for the length of the maps, I think that he's a very strong candidate. Like I have like if you adjust for just the length of the maps and the kills that he got, he's averaging more around like 25 kills per game, like on a neutral playing field or whatever in a game that goes 4.1 rounds, I think is about the average right now of control rounds per game. So like I think 25 as like a median kills per game seems more right to me, just from the stats that we have so far. But again, small sample size. But yeah, I think was it 20? Yeah, 22 and a half. Yeah, I think I'd take it at 22 and a half. I wouldn't take it at 23 and a half if we do see it go up. But yeah, that was sort of what led me to be surprised that all of New York's players have been playing fairly well. But yeah, Kismet has looked really good in control and just like yeah, I think his pace of play in control is maybe a bit more than 22 and a half worth of points. I don't know. I guess it depends on how strong you think Minnesota is and their ability to take it to 3-1. I guess and maybe that goes back to map too. I mean, we've seen Invasion. What Invasion has like an 80% defensive win rate
Mm-hmm.
right now. With that map, you're pretty much guaranteed at least 4 rounds, and so it's that's one where yeah, if I saw Invasion, I might be hammering the over there because it's yeah, you're very likely to get 4, maybe even 5 rounds against a bad team if they start off on defense, or if they start off on defense. So yeah, I think that's sort of what I'm looking at there. It's a game time decision based on map, but I'm liking the over.
Oh yeah. Shout out the Bulldog. I like that line in itself. Obviously, game time decision with the maps. It is a massive piece of picking things properly, especially with this year's game. And I feel like I say that every year, but there are specific maps that, if you're gonna unload a little bit more than other maps, those maps do exist, and invasion control is definitely one of them. That's what the stats are saying right now. That's what some guy, Dr. Doug, I know, is saying. So I'm just gonna go with it because
Speaking speaking of Kismet, I just had to say this because I've had no outlet to say this otherwise, and I just think it's really funny and it's worth mentioning. But you know the meme that was really popular over Christmas break with the Tiger Woods big dog, where he's like big dog, and like everybody was like making it into like other things. I can't believe nobody made a Kismet meme about that, or at least I didn't see one. I feel like something like New York looking for a fourth and they wanted to like make a run for champs or whatever, and they're like big dog or whatever. Like I
oh
feel like
yeah.
that would have been hilarious, and I'm too scared to tweet it in case it just completely flops or whatever. But like when we were talking about him, it reminded me over break. I was like just scrolling Twitter, like, is nobody gonna make the big dog joke about Kismet? Like that would be so funny. Like they literally call it the bulldog. Like I don't know. It just felt like it was right there for anyone to take, and I didn't want to be the one to take it. So
Well, we'll
sorry
know
to
if the New
digress,
York
but
team, listens to this podcast and this tweet goes live from their main account, we know they listen to it. So thank you guys for listening.
I mean,
Uh,
I feel like the window is passed a little bit. The
they
big
come
dog meme
back.
was funny, but I don't know. It just yeah, it's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see, but yeah. So that is the slate for Friday. That's what we got for you guys. A lot of good insight coming from Dr. Doug. A lot of bullshitting from me. Dr. Doug, what do you got for the people before we land this puppy? Anything?
No, yeah, happy betting this weekend. Yeah, I'm certainly excited. Obviously, had a good second week, so I'm excited. And now gambling's really fun. When you're winning, gambling is so fun. But yeah,
I wouldn't
gamble
know.
responsibly. Always, yeah. I think we talk a lot of stuff here, and like even just sort of reflecting on what we've talked about. Like, be wary of the sample size. I think I harped on it a lot of week two, where it was like, okay, we have very little sample from this year, but the sample from last year is maybe not as reliable anymore. We know how teams are going to play. I'd say the same thing still applies now in week 2. Like I'm looking at least probably 5 weeks before I start making confident claims on this show saying let's just look at only this year's data to make a decision. Like it is going to be really hard for me to get out of bed for three control games making me hammer overs without significant map understanding or like knowing the maps in advance or something like some other piece of intel as well. Like it's just we're still in the you don't know what you don't know zone right now. Any team could be good or bad. So I mean we say gamble responsibly, but just like think responsibly too about this, what the data you have means. Like Kismet's averaging 23.5 kills or whatever, but that's over 3 games. Like that just is very small. And like that's just sort of my reflection as we've talked here.
Wise words from Dr. Doug, and I'll give you some wise words too if you do not want to listen to Dr. Doug. The best way to not burn your hand is to touch the stove once and realize that it hurts very bad and you'll never do it again. So if you want to burn yourself. I promise you won't do it again, but don't do it with the amount of money that you're not willing to lose. But gamble responsibly, of course. Stop making some money back for those Christmas gifts that you might have bought this year. Now it's the time to really crank things up a notch. Listen to this podcast. Look at the analytics. Make educated picks. And, add some more green to that living room now that the Christmas tree is gone. Amen. That's all we got for you for this week. Have some fun this weekend, win some money, and we will see you next week.